from the Maya area into the city-state of Teotihuacan, we may readily assume that it existed. Thus, we have a foreign presence, likely part of a military caste in bringing new religious ideas, who are robbing the land of goods to send to their foreign city for their own gain, not for the gain of those in the Lamite or Nephite area. Assuming a Mesoamerican context, there is no better candidate for the Gadianton robbers who are contemporary with Mormon. A military association from Teotihuacan that brought a new militaristic philosophy tied to a new emphasis on sorceries, witchcrafts, and magics is a remarkably apt description of Mormon's contemporary Gadiantons as well as the Teotihuacanos. The known history of that time period completely supports the nature of the description the Mormon gives for Gadianton robbers with which he is personally familiar. To this point in our process of historical upstreaming, we have a very likely candidate for the Gadiantons of Mormon's day. Of course, our problem, as noted earlier, is that this Teotihuacan influence is not known for the earlier periods. How do we continue upstream if we know that the stream isn't there? Interestingly enough, we return to Mormon the author and his artificial patterning of secular history. We are not looking for the presence of Teotihuacan in an earlier instance of the Gadianton robbers. We're looking for the thread that Mormon uses to draw them to the earlier period. As Mormon moves his understanding of the Gadiantons as a central Mexican influence earlier in time, he brings with the concept some of the set of meanings associated with the Teotihuacan Gadiantons. In particular, we have murder and plunder for gain. When we are introduced to the Gadiantons who gain control over the Nephite government in Helaman, we see them as a similarly separate entity carrying with them the traits of greed and murder. Helaman 6, 17 to 18. For behold, the Lord had blessed them so long with the riches of this world that they had not been stirred up to anger, to wars, nor to bloodshed. Therefore they began to set their hearts upon riches, and they began to seek to get gain, that they might be lifted up one above another. Therefore they began to commit secret murders, and to rob, and to plunder, that they might get gain. And now behold, those murderers and plunderers were a band who had been formed by Kishkumen and Gadianton. And now it came to pass that there were many, even among the Nephites of Gadianton's band, but behold, they were more numerous among the wicked parts of the Lamanites, and they were called Gadianton's robbers and murderers. We have a parallel description of a group of people who are among the Nephites, but are not Nephites. That same group is among the Lamanites, but they are not Lamanites. They are intent on seeking gain, and therefore they murder, rob, and plunder. They are Gadiantons. These are the traits of the central Mexicans of Mormon's time, and Mormon clearly links the Gadiantons of his own time to the earlier time period, both by name and attributes. Of course, these characteristics described, that of murder for political gain and robbings and plunderings, could easily fit with the developing cultural pressures among the Maya at this time period. There's no particular need to see this group as foreign, except in the construction of Mormon's meta-theme. For Mormon, there is a characteristic set of secret combinations that ties together all of the 1,000 years of history, and that is a connection to the Jaredites. The final piece of the puzzle of Mormon's Gadianton robbers is the nature of this conceptual thread with which Mormon ties together nearly 2,000 years of New World history. Both textually and conceptually, Mormon ties the secret combination together based on the underlying inheritance from the Jaredites. Although Mormon takes pains to show that the secret combinations were not learned from the records of the Jaredites that the Nephite record keepers preserved, he nevertheless takes equal pains to state that they had come from the same source as the Jaredite secret combinations, that same being who did plot with Cain. The connection between the Jaredites and the Gadianton robbers of Nephi's time would have been an easy correlation. Jaredite names frequently appear in the Nephite faction that is associated with pro-Cain separatists. Gadianton might be a name of Jaredite origin, but Kishkumen almost certainly comes from Jaredite heritage among the Ulikites. Mormon's problem is making a connection between the Gadiantons of his own day and the Jaredites. If as proposed here, Mormon is seeing a central Mexican or Teotihuacan influence and describing it as the Gadiantons, then he must have some reason to connect this completely foreign culture to the Jaredites. Mormon makes his connection explicit by his insertion of the northward migration text. Since they were Nephites who went north, Mormon can conceptually have them carry the secret combinations with them. That's the mechanism that Mormon uses. But what about the Teotihuacan invasion allowed him to justify it as being connected to the Jaredites? For this answer, we need more historical information about the Mesoamerican culture area. The Olmec is the name used for the people who occupy the territory of the Book of Mormon known as Jaredite. We should resist the temptation to equate the Olmec with the Jaredites, because that would imply that the Olmec began with the Jaredites, and this is known to be incorrect. However, just as the Lehites entered a world with other people in it, so did the Jaredites. They happened to enter the precise area of the most highly evolved culture of their day. It would be accurate to say that they participated in Olmec culture. This participation would have extended to the language of the Olmec and to the entire Olmec cultural catalog. One of the mysteries of the Olmec found its resolution in the late 70s with the reconstruction of their language. Coffin and Campbell presented a groundbreaking paper that noted the large number of loanwords coming from the Mihesoke language. They also noted that Mihesoke would have existed in precisely the location of the archaeological Olmec and at the same time. Thus they suggested, and their suggestion has been widely accepted, that Mihesoke was the language of the Olmec, a culture so influential that they lent both culture and vocabulary to many other groups in Mesoamerica. As the language of the Olmec, Mihesoke would have also been the language of the Jaredites. The Mulekites would have participated in that cultural zone, and their historical move up the valley of the Grijalva parallels the movement of the daughter language of Mihesoke into that same region. Based on the connection to the Olmec and the geographic distribution of Soke, this daughter language would have been the language of the Mulekites and likely the lingua franca of the Nephites. Thus, the connection between the Jaredites and the Mulekites was evidenced by language as well as historical and cultural ties. Until recently, a similar understanding of the linguistic affiliation of Teotihuacan has been among the greatest of Mesoamerican mysteries. This city might be called a Mesoamerican Rome because of its size and regional importance, but there was absolutely no trace of any language that they spoke. It was a situation analogous to knowing about the Romans from their architecture and engineering feats, but never finding a scrap of Latin nor of any Romance language. This situation has recently been resolved. Although the results are currently unpublished, John Justison has indicated that the time depth of many of the Mihesoke loanwords suggests that the language of Teotihuacan was Mihesokean. This linguistic affiliation gives us the last time Mormon would have needed to connect the secret combination of his day to the combination of the Jaredites of old. For Mormon, Teotihuacan would have come from the same source. Mormons certainly knew the linguistic affiliation of the Mulekites, and knowing that same language affiliation with Teotihuacan, a language different from all the Maya languages that were spoken by most of the peoples Mormon would have identified as Lamanite, Mormon would understand Teotihuacan as having ties to the ancient Olmec, or to the Jaredites as Mormon knew them. To Mormon, these were another branch of the old Jaredites. For Mormon, the Gadianton secret combination continued to rise from its ancient Jaredite roots. Mormon uses the literary concept of the type scene to reinforce a spiritual pattern that emerges from historical events. This historical pattern consists of an internal secret combination that is interested in power, gain, and political ascendancy through murder. The moral of the type scene is that the secret combinations cause the destruction of the people, as defined by their religio-political structure. The quintessential type scene to which all others refer is that of the Jaredites. Mormon links each of his parallel type scenes back to this Jaredite level. The second type scene in historical order is that of the Gadiantons of Helaman's time, which is prior to the arrival of Messiah in the New World. This secret society is the one that is most elaborately described, with multiple internal parallels that highlight the same characteristics of the secret combinations of the Jaredites. Mormon explicitly connects these Gadiantons to the Jaredites, and the connection may have been heightened by the Jaredite names associated with the movement. This tie to the Jaredites would have come through the historical connection between the Mulekites and the remainder of the Jaredite civilization, a connection that not only lent ideas such as secret combinations, but also a language that was derived from that of the Jaredites. The result of this named secret combination is the destruction of the Nephite polity. The third and final type scene occurs in Mormon's day. The secret combination is called the Gadianton robbers, and Mormon links the secret combination of his day to that of Helaman's time by the northward migration narrative, as well as to the linguistic ties to the Jaredites or the Olmecs. Each of these type scenes is built upon historical data, but the data are related in such a way to tell us more than history. They also tell us the future. They form a predictable pattern. As complex as this meta-theme is in the Book of Mormon, it is expanded by yet one more meta-theme that Mormon saw, or at least hoped for. Not only is the presence of secret societies repetitive and predictive, Mormon likely saw the aftermath of the secret societies as repetitive and predictive. It is probably the reason that only 2 of the secret combination sets are named Gadiantons. Mormon's text shows